today's story is set in the Arctic. Now the Arctic is at the top of the world, right about here. Sometimes the Arctic is also called the North Pole. Now in our story and in the Arctic, there's lots of snow and lots of ice, and there are creatures that live there, special animals that live on the snow and on the ice. And you've probably heard of lots of them, like walruses and polar bears and seals. But you might be thinking of another animal that you know lives on the ice and snow, and that is a penguin. But there are no penguins in this book, and I'll tell you why. Because penguins live in the Antarctic, which is all the way on the other side of the world from the North Pole. Penguins live in the South Pole. So penguins have never ever met polar bears. So if you're ever reading a book and there's a penguin and a polar bear in it, then you know that's just made up because they live on opposite sides of the world. Fancy that? Now in this story, there is a really super duper Charlotte Cooper, really cool animal, and it's a type of whale. It's a type of whale called a narwhal. Now a narwhal is a medium-sized whale and it has a huge tusk growing out from the top of its head. But it isn't a tusk. What it is a tooth. Their front left tooth, mostly in the male ones, grows out through their lip and just keeps on growing and growing and growing and growing. So that is like, imagine if one of your teeth grew all the way down to your knees. That's what happens to the narwhals. So sometimes they're called unicorns of the sea, but that is not true because unicorns aren't real and narwhals are very real. They live up there in the Arctic Ocean and that's where they stay. And one of the things that they use their big tusk for, their tusks are very, very, very sensitive and they use them very, very gently. And as they're hunting fish, because they eat cod, Arctic cod, they go over to the fish very gently and they tap it very gently with their big tusk. And that stuns the cod just for a moment, just for a second, which gives them enough time to suck it up and suck it in. Cool, huh? So that is narwhals. I love them. I think they're absolutely fascinating creatures. Now, if you are interested in narwhals and in some other types of whales and dolphins, there are over 80 different types. Now, there's a really cool website you can have a look at, which is called wdcs.org, and that is the Whale and Dolphin Conservation Society website. On there, it tells you all about how we can do more things to protect them, and you can adopt a whale or a dolphin, and you can read all about the 80 different types of whales and dolphins. But if you are ready, let's read our story. Today's story is called Whale Gets Stuck, and it's by Charles Fugue and Karen Hales. It's pretty cool, this one. It has some beautiful illustrations. Illustrations means pictures. So I'm going to try and show these ones a little bit more than I normally do. Okay, so are you ready? Get your teddy and snuggle down and let's read Whale Gets Stuck. It was midsummer in the Arctic. The sun shone all day and all night, and the sheet of ice that had covered the sea all through the winter was melting and breaking into small islands. Whale loved the open sea. He dived down into the deep, dark water. Then he turned, thrust his tail as hard as he could, and swam back up to the bright surface. "Look at me!" Whale cried as he leapt out of the water. Fish looked up at Whale and quickly swam aside. He didn't want Whale to land on top of him. But slap! Whale landed right in the middle of an ice floe, and struggle as he might, he was stuck fast. "What am I going to do now?" he spluttered. Just then, a group of animals arrived to help out. "Don't worry," said Walrus, "we'll soon have you back in the water." "Dolphins," he bellowed, "tip the floe from underneath and I will leave a whale off the ice with my magnificent tusks." But Whale didn't move an inch. "I know," Puffin squawked to the birds. "Let's lift him off instead." The birds flew up and perched on top of Whale. "Ouch! Stop!" shrieked Whale as the birds tried to grip his slippery skin with their sharp claws. "It won't work," he sighed sadly. I'm stuck here forever. Everyone gathered around Walrus, hoping that he would have a bright idea. Meanwhile, under the water, Fish couldn't see what was happening up above, and he was getting worried. Why hadn't Whale come back below the water to see him? By now, a group of polar bears and seals had arrived to see what all the fuss was about. "That's it," said Walrus excitedly. "You seals can help push while I leave a whale with my magnificent tusks, and the dolphins tip the ice floe. That should do it." So the seals pushed, Walrus strained, and the dolphins tipped, but it was no good. Whale was still stuck fast. Poor Whale began to sob quietly. Suddenly, Narwhal appeared. If Whale leapt onto the ice, then he must be able to leap off again. Perhaps he just needs a little jab from underneath, he smiled. He aimed his sharp tusk at the dark shadow above, thrust his tail, and thump! Narwhal's tusk wasn't quite long enough. Whale was still stuck, and Narwhal got a nasty bump on the nose. Meanwhile, Walrus had another plan. "If the polar bears leap onto the edge of the ice and the dolphins tip the other side, then I will leave a whale with my magnificent tusks while the seals push." So, the polar bears leapt, the dolphins tipped, Walrus strained, and the seals pushed. The ice floe moved, slowly, tipped up, pointed towards the sky, and then, splash! It fell back into the water, and a huge wave swept everyone clean off the ice. Everyone, that is, except Whale. As the day went on, the sun got hotter and brighter, and Whale was still stuck. The animals pushed and shoved until finally they gave up and lay hot and panting on the cool ice. Deep in the water, Fish peered upwards, and this time he could see exactly what was going on. The heat of the sun and the hot, weary animals had begun to melt the ice. Fish could see that the ice was very thin. Above the surface, the tired animals had not noticed the creaking and the cracking all around them until crunch! All the animals were plunged right back into the sea, including Whale. Whale was just about to leap out of the water with joy when, "Whale, no!" cried Fish. Whale remembered that his friend was still waiting for him, so with a slap of his tail, he dived under the water. And the two friends spent the rest of the day splashing beneath the surface together. And that is the end of the story. Did you see Narwhal? You see, he came up with his tusk and gave him a poke. Awesome. Now, if you would like a copy of this book, it is as ever in the notes, or have a look in your library. Maybe you can get it out of there. If you're enjoying the stories, don't forget to like the Facebook page and click subscribe or like or both on the YouTube channel. And that's it from me. Night.